What do you think if someone said AI is only as good as the person using it? Because someone who's a senior software engineer who knows a lot about writing code and creating software, they can do something way better than someone who's never touched software. It doesn't mean that AI can't get you 0 to 1. If you've never touched a website, you can ask Codex, make me a website. Is it going to be good? Is it going to convert? Is it going to be secure? Probably not. Someone who's built a house before, you give them a better tool. They're going to know what to do with it. They're going to know how to not use it. They're going to know where they're going to not be interested in changing their workflow because they've done it. They've seen what it's like. They've seen what works. They've seen what doesn't work. But if you give them a more powerful tool, now you can lift all these blocks without doing it by hand. And that's going to speed up your workflow in this particular one thing. Okay, they might be interested in that. And this is kind of where we're at with AI now, where two people using the same model are not going to get the same results. Two people using the same model with two different harnesses are not going to get the same results. Okay, if you're using the ChatGPT website with the best model, that's going to be different to someone who's got Codex set up, running locally with MCP tools connected, with skills, with different rules for the agent, and running specific workflows on it. The output that you're both going to get is going to be night and day. This process of using AI has been a constant updating of this paradigm of what can be done with it. What is it useful for? What is it not useful for? And I think a lot of people's idea of what AI is the ChatGPT website. Okay, they're not using it in the terminal. They're not setting up custom skills. They're not connecting it to tools. They're not trying to replace work they do manually with something that gets done by AI. I posted a video the other day talking about how I'm using Claude Code with my Obsidian Vault. Obsidian is basically it's markdown files that you can organize, and you can connect this to Claude and you can run different commands. You can add skills, you can add different workflows. For example, you might add a journal. You might write your journal in Obsidian, give access to Claude because it's just a folder on your computer, and then you can ask questions about it. So you could say, has this problem happened before? Has this type of issue that I'm encountering today happened previously? Can you analyze what I've written today? And one of the most genuinely useful ways that this has impacted my life is writing in this journal all the time, every day, and then asking Claude to analyze the journal entries and pick out mental models, which would help me to deal with the problems I encounter on a regular basis, whether that's the way I'm thinking about something, whether it's my stress, whether it's trying to control a situation too much and getting frustrated by that. Human problems, which I genuinely experience, I write about them to try and understand them better. And there are loads and loads of patterns that are throughout my journal from writing in this for nearly a year that are basically solved problems, whether that's from Stoicism, Buddhism, or general good principles of how to think better as a human that I was not able to see on my own. And asking Claude, hey, can you find mental models and help me understand them, help me use them? I posted a video talking about this, and someone was like, AI's just not good for that. AI doesn't know how to think. This is not a scenario where you're asking AI to think. AI has this broad knowledge. If you give it context and you give it a task, I can say, what was that thing that happened in that restaurant where I didn't like what the waiter said to me? Okay, something really vague, semantic, not very exact about when that was. It's just a situation. I can say, when was that? And what happened that day? If there's something in my journal, Claude can find that. So if I say, help me figure out situations where I've been stressed and not been able to see a problem clearly and understand it, can you help me figure out a common thread between them and be able to address them because this is something which is affecting me? It can go and do that really well. In this comment on my video, this guy said that you should figure that out yourself. You shouldn't use AI to do that. Now, if I wasn't reading these things and looking at it every day, yeah, it wouldn't help me as much as it does. But the way that my journal works, in Obsidian, there's a skill which runs in the background every day that analyzes the journal. And it's constantly looking for whether there's a mental model it can extract, or if something that I've written would be helped by an existing mental model that we've already pulled out of it. And what that's helped me to see is that a lot of the problems I experience come down to a small number of things. And it has genuinely given me good ways to think about the problems I encounter. When you feel uncertain, it's quite normal to kind of circle around that idea that you're thinking about. That uncertain thing, you just think about it constantly, and you spend time and you spend your energy on thinking about this thing, the different angles, the worst case scenarios. And what Claude helped me to do was understand that if more thinking isn't producing new information, that is rumination. So I can just ask myself that question. Is what I'm thinking about right now producing new information? No. Okay, then I'm ruminating. And at least being able to catch that gives me an opportunity to then think differently. It's like, oh, this thing I'm worried about, there's no more amount of thinking that's going to help me deal with this situation. And usually it means that some action has to be taken. The thinking part feels safer than taking an action. And having something that can say, hey, that thing that you've been having problems with, that just happened again today, and you didn't notice it. You didn't realize that. And here's a good way to look at that. Here's one of these good principles that's helped you before. That is genuinely useful. And that isn't asking AI to do something which is out of its capability. That's well within the capability of an AI model today when it's linked to your journal. I'm working on setting up a demo environment so I can show exactly how to use this. I'm going to try and do it with Notion instead of Obsidian. Obsidian is quite good, but Notion just lets you sync it across devices. And I think for most people, it's going to be an easier entry point for them to utilize this. I use AI for most of the work that I'm doing, whether it's research, writing, coding, reviewing code, testing things. I'm using AI every day in my work. For at least 9 months, I've been using Claude Code on the Mac subscription. I use it basically as the interface for all of my work. The videos I want to make are around how AI is genuinely useful to me. I'm talking about my life, my personal life, and my work, and how I use it. And I feel like every time I talk about it, someone's like, no, you shouldn't be using it like that, or that's just a bad way to use it, and you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, I don't care about any of that. If it helps me, then that's the way I'm going to use it. The videos I'm going to be posting are going to be low production, but high value based on what I genuinely use this for. The work earns me money, and the stuff I use it for in my personal workflow has genuinely helped me to organize my life, to look at things differently, to improve my mental models, to help me with research for travel, to help me keep on top of things, to help me set my tasks better in a way that doesn't just constantly burn me out. And it genuinely helps me. But I have been trying to replace work I would do with AI, but in deterministic ways. If you use skills are like workflows. For example, if I say to this, so this is my Obsidian Vault, and I'm going to say, can you find me the best coffee shops in Niman in Chiang Mai? And what this is going to do is use my places skill. There's a clear preference for this in your Vault to use the places API for location lookups rather than web search. So this is going to use the Google Cloud Console. So the places API from Google to look at this. It's not going to search its normal search. And I found that this is better because it gets up-to-date reviews. It can look at distances. I can say which one's closest to where I'm staying. So if it knows where I'm staying, which this does, it can tell me what's closest. So I can say, find me coffee shops within 10 minutes of this Airbnb. So this is something which I could have done by going on Google and looking at this. But if it's got my preferences and I give it a specific thing to follow, then the output I get from it is what I'm expecting, that I know that I value. And so is AI good for finding places? Yeah, it's kind of good. But if you give it Google Maps, it's really good. It can tell you literally the number of reviews and what the reviews are kind of saying. You know, this one, Fohide, 4.7, 659. That's literally the exact information from there. And I can even ask it about the reviews. And mine has preferences about the reviews because I don't believe a lot of bad reviews. And see here, it's saying, save these to my Chiang Mai location note, right? That's kind of what it knows I use this like. So I can look at research for a new place and then find where are the coffee shops that are near where I'm going to stay. What cash do I need? What's the visa situation? What are the Airbnbs that are decent? And it knows my preferences. So this idea again, is AI good for that? No, it's not good for that. But with the right harness and the right instructions and the particular tools that you want it to use, it's a completely different thing. It's not the same in any way comparing this to what the ChatGPT website is going to do. Like, this is going to save that note. It's going to update other information. It's connected in Obsidian. That's going to show me useful stuff. And if I say, hey, what was that place that you suggested that looked quite nice? It wasn't very far from the Airbnb. Okay, it's going to know. And this makes it useful for me. So in a lot of my personal stuff and my workflows, I've been trying to use skills and skills and specific tools that those skills link to do useful things. And they're more deterministic because the workflows are spelled out super clearly of what it should actually do. And then it becomes useful. So the idea, this isn't that good for that thing. Okay, you probably don't have it connected to a good source of data. You probably don't have it connected to a tool which is going to make it useful. And you probably don't have the clear steps to make it be able to do something useful. A clear example of this in my work is I started using the Chrome MCP. So someone wanted me to upload all of this information to a course platform. And I was looking at it and I thought, I wonder if I can get the Chrome MCP to do this. Then for future course uploads, it's not a piece of work that I have to do. The good thing, and this is very similar to the way I write skills, if I can get it to do a workflow and it works, then I codify it. Then I turn that into something that's repeatable. So now in this particular repo where a lot of the work has been uploading courses, it has a skill to format the courses in a way that that platform accepts it. For example, that uses SCORM units, and then having a step-by-step of how to do it within that platform using the Chrome MCP. A lot of people's understanding of what AI can do is what they've seen the Claude app or what they've seen ChatGPT do. When you've connected it to a specific website using Chrome, so it's got browser access, and then it's doing specific things based on what data you need it to upload, and that data has been formatted specifically for the website that is being uploaded to, that's a completely different thing. It's not even comparable. And I'm not saying that you should forget how to do everything and let AI handle all of it. That's not really my stance on it. But using it for things that I would generally do and understanding how I could get it to do that and what the limitations of that are, where are the edges in that situation, that has been useful because a lot of things would be better for you to just do yourself. And some things would be better if an agent can go and do 10 versions of it at the same time and consolidate or learn from it and figure out the best way of doing it, even if you're going to manually do it later. What Superpowers does is it helps you write plans and execute plans in Claude Code. The useful skills that are behind this is brainstorming, test-driven development, debugging, writing plans, using Git work trees, executing plans. If I say, I've got this idea for a feature, it's going to ask you questions about it to clarify exactly what that is. And then it's going to turn that into a spec, and then it turns a spec into a plan, and then it can execute a plan using sub-agents, for example, on a new Git work tree. And what that means is that you can run 4 different Claude codes working on 4 different sets of features at the same time, and then have another skill which is going to look at open PRs, run a code review on them, open them in the Chrome MCP, test them, debug them, run end-to-end tests, run a local CI on it. Okay, you can get it to do all of that. And that's the way that I use this every day. I think that Superpowers is probably the most widely accepted meta of using Claude Code at the moment. Some of the problems that I've experienced with this that I think can be improved with other small skills is, for example, I will write my ideas in Todoist or Linear. For a couple of projects, I specifically use Linear, and for other things, I use Todoist. Todoist is like a task tracking tool, and Linear, most people know what that is, but it's for software, it's for tracking issues, it's for working on things, and just you can link it to open PRs, and it's very good. You have an MCP for Todoist and an MCP for Linear, and they can look at what is open there. So for example, because I don't want to have to manually tell Claude exactly what to do based on what tasks I've got something called project status, and it's like what needs to be done. And it's going to be able to outline what tasks an agent can do versus what would be a manual task that it needs me to do. And when it does this, it uses sub agents. One of them is going to check open PRs, one of them is going to check linear, one of them is going to check Todoist, and another one is going to be able to synthesize that information and make sure that it's telling me what's high priority, what, for example, there could be stale tasks in Todoist that have already been opened as PRs. There could be PRs which haven't been tested or haven't passed CI. And this kind of brings a lot of things together, because every time I open a project in a different repo, I can just run project status and see everything from like as an overview of what I need to know. What I need to know quickly when I get into a project. Okay, so this workflow makes the result I get from Claude Code predictable and aligned with what I need it to do, what is genuinely useful to me. And a lot of that isn't actually something that AI is doing. Like, I am not relying on this AI's knowledge. I'm giving it specific knowledge of, for example, PRs or tasks, and telling it specific workflows of check the task, check what's open, check if that's already been done, so it can identify stale tasks. The AI is not useful until you've done these kind of things with it. Okay, next thing. The problem, once you've got that, is the tendency is to want to go and do more things. I can open 4 Claude Code sessions on 4 different work trees in 4 different repos and tell it to go and do a load of stuff. But then say, I've got 16 different features that I need to then understand and make sure that they actually work. And I feel like I've got a tendency to want to do that, because you think, wow, I've got this powerful thing and I've got this good workflow. But there is a problem of coming back to work that AI has done that you aren't sure exactly what it's done or whether it works. This is where this context switching problem happens. So when you move from one task to another, part of your mind stays on the first task, and then the capacity you have for the thing you're switching to is slightly less. So you're never fully at 100% capacity when you're switching between things, because there's like a residue. And what I've realized is I thought, I'm going to try and do my normal workflow, but only on one project at a time. So even if I've got 4 different features being worked on in a single project, I've found that it's definitely easier to switch between just them 4 than multiple projects. So the concept here is, imagine you're working on 3 websites, and each website has 3 agents or 4 agents working on them, working on features. Only limiting it to one project at a time, I find there's more longevity, there's more capacity for me to be able to stay focused and not just feel burnt out at the end of my work. So even though there's this tendency to want to do more, I think that it is still good advice to focus on one thing at a time and see it through. These are just some of the ideas that have been useful for me. I am constantly using this in my work and my personal life, and I want to start sharing more about this because I do find these things genuinely useful. And I think that a lot of people have an outdated concept of what you can use AI for. I have another video that talks about levels of AI use and how to sort of level your workspace up, because there's a whole nother concept about setting up a workspace in a way that AI can use it in a useful way. And that's kind of the way I use Claude, as this control panel. For example, for me to be able to run client report, to generate a report for a client, and each client has maybe a slightly different service being done for them. So in one case, the person may be not very technical. So the report which we send them needs to be in quite basic language based on what they actually care about. But the internal report, for me to be able to deliver something, is probably quite technical. So there's an internal report, there's a client-facing report, there's a communication preference for that client, but then there's also different websites which this might need to look at. So for example, if there's someone who I've got a retainer with where the data which we need to look at is in Google Search Console, Google Analytics, Google Ads, and we're looking at all of those things combined and then synthesizing that information into a report that client's going to read. Now, that guy doesn't care about most of those details. He cares about how many phone calls did I get, how many people requested a quote. But what I need to look at to be able to actually improve that is a completely different bit of information, and it's spread across multiple websites. But when I do that, I open his project and I run that, and that's it. Because that workflow that I went through and did one time is now a slash command. And that genuinely does save me time and it genuinely does do something useful for me. Is AI useful for client reports? Well, it depends. How much information have you given it? Is it using the Chrome MCP to look at 4 different websites? And is it looking at the CRM to get the communication preference of that client? How technical is the internal report that it's giving you? Is it based on the tech that you're actually using? Is it based on the work which has already been done? Can it look at GitHub and actually look at what's been done this week or this month? And has that improved anything? This is where how much information you give it and how the information is structured for it to be able to do something useful is probably 80% of the work that needs to be done. Most of it is that environment that you use it in. So I'm done with this conversation that is like, can AI do that thing? Yes, it probably can. And if it can't, you can probably make it do that thing somehow. Is it good at that thing? If not, why not? What would it need to make it better at that thing? And can you do that? And this is how I'm constantly using it. So some of these ways that I'm using it in my work and personal life, you know, they are a bit janky. They're a bit sort of strung together, but it's constantly improving. And the ways that I'm using it day to day is constantly changing. So the videos I'm going to make are going to be along these lines, just talking through Claude Code, different workflows, and how it's genuinely useful for me.